What is the circle and why do I use it? Well, the circle is simply a representation of the type of quagmire we find ourselves in. And remember, the truth should be simple. If someone is making something complicated, it may not be the truth. So let's just go over all the details of the circle, and this will give some more information as to why I use it. So, what is the center of the circle? The Tao Te Ching says, stay in the center of the circle and allow all things to take their course. This is telling us to be the observer. So the center of the circle represents the whole. This represents us when we are detached, when we are thoughtless. This represents us when we are staying present, full surrender. We are allowing God to work through us, because remember, we are God observing itself. We are allowing the divine to work through us. So that's what the center of the circle represents. Because remember, allow all things to take its course. What happens is, as soon as we start getting caught in the cycles of thought, we go from being the observer to identifying with the actor, or the somebody, thinking we're somebody, thinking things are happening to us, thinking we're in control. And when we start identifying with this somebodyness, the ego, it brings us from being the whole, the observer, into the illusion, right? And we start identifying with the actor. And when we start identifying with the somebodyness, thinking we're somebody doing something, this creates a limiting lower perspective. Because whenever we're stuck in the cycles of thought and we're identifying with the ego, actor, somebodyness, we create this limiting perspective, which is limiting what we can see. And as long as we're caught in this limiting perspective, in the illusion, we will never be able to see the whole truth. What happens is, when we get caught in these cycles of thought, we create separation. Remember, this is the whole. So identifying with the actor is creating separation. This is called duality, because it's separation, right? So the whole, the observer, duality, separation, the ego. So what we want to do is get back to the whole. How do we get back to the whole? Remember, this is thoughtlessness. This is getting caught in the cycles of thought. And when we are caught in identifying with this somebodyness, this is why we get caught in the cycles of suffering. This is why we suffer, because we're identifying with the somebody who is suffering, as opposed to observing it all. And what happens when we become the observer is we realize we're just watching nature running off. It's quite amazing. So to go, again, this is why I use the circle. It is just a visual representation of going from the whole to getting caught in the identification with the somebodyness, and what happens when we identify with the somebodyness, and how we get back to the whole. How do we get back to the whole? Presence and purification. We have to surrender. We have to stay present, which helps us dissolve this ego, this lower perspective, and start be able to see higher perspectives. So why do I use the circle? Well, the circle was given to me, right, as, the universe, God, the divine, gave it to me as a tool to teach with, as a simplistic representation of the quagmire we find ourselves in. Is it perfect? No. Is there better representation? Probably. But again, the truth, remember, is simple. We always want to come back to the whole. The whole is the observer. No attachments, in thoughtlessness. When we start thinking we're somebody doing something, we're going to get caught in these limiting perspectives. And when we're in our limiting perspectives, we're not going to be able to see the whole truth. We're not properly opening the channels of communication with the divine and allowing God to work through us. Because when we are the observer, we are God observing itself. So I just wanted to give you guys a quick rundown of what the circle is, what it represents, and why I use it. I've been given this as a tool to teach with. That is why I'm using it, and it is so simple to understand, and it makes it easy to understand what happens when we observe, what happens when we start thinking, and how we create these separations, right? The duality. What happens when we identify with the ego, with somebodyness. A lot of people leave comments saying they can't stop thinking or for X, Y, and Z reasons. Remember, the ego is going to resist very strongly to any indication of you stopping thinking, because that is the ego, right? The ego is the guard at the gate to the divine. The ego is the guard at the gate to the observer, to the whole. It doesn't want you to stop thinking. The illusion doesn't want you to stop thinking. So the illusion is going to constantly be throwing aggravation and stimulation in every conceivable way at your somebodyness, trying to inflate your ego and your somebodyness, especially when we're younger, to make you a hardened somebody. So you'll be very hard to even realize there is an observer or the center of the circle. This is part of the trouble we are born into. We are born into the illusion. We are born into a very hardened state of somebodyness, and breaking out of this can be very difficult for most people. What happens is a lot of people may never break out of it, at least in this lifetime, and will have to come back many lifetimes. Most of us will be coming back many times more till we fully are able to dissolve the ego completely and detach completely and surrender fully to get back to the real wholeness, the center of the circle. Stay in the center of the circle and allow all things to take their course. This is pure surrender, pure thoughtlessness, pure detachment, but it's hard to stay in that. And remember, every second we're in the present moment, we're actually dissolving the ego and moving closer to the center of the circle. That's why presence is such an important aspect of our awakening and purification, because purification works hand in hand with presence to dissolve the ego, creating balance, right? And getting back to the whole from the separation. If you have any questions at all that you would like me to answer regarding this analogy or anything I've said or explained in this video or any of my other videos, please feel free to leave them below, and I'll do my best to either respond to you or make a video response, because I know a lot of people have the same questions. I get a lot of the same questions about this diagram and what it represents, and the illusion of control and thought. How can I stop thinking? Like, I made a video, how can I stop thinking if I have to think about the future? Things like this. I'll try to answer these questions as best as I can, given the understanding that I've been given. And remember, guys, if we want deeper understandings of things like this or anything in the universe, we need to empty the mind. We have to stop searching for answers and taking in information. We actually have to empty the mind and create this space to allow these understandings. Okay, that is very important. This is called reconstituting the mind. I have many videos on this. Thank you for joining me in this beautiful present moment of our cosmic beloved. I'm very grateful to be here with you. If you'd like to join me in the mantra that represents our wholeness with the Creator, I am God's eternal love pouring forth. I am God's eternal love pouring forth. Namaste.